looking at me, I don't look wildly professional. And then I hate to say it, but sometimes when I'm in my comfy clothes, it's even worse. Like I got
Yeah.
camo gym shorts, and it's like in the wintertime, I usually have a beard down to here.
Hello and welcome to Center for Victory's podcast of Your Best Day Yet. At Center for Victory, we're here to help unlock, reinforce, and enrich relationships through personal and professional development. I'm Eric Guy, Chief Victory Officer at the Center for Victory. Today we have a very special guest. We're going to get into what he's doing. He's, Pittsburgh guy, and
Yeah.
you might notice his last name. Maybe you don't because she's been on a couple times as a guest, but a brother and brother-in-law to our guests sometimes, Caleb and Sarah Kolb, or used to be Sarah Watkins. But
Yeah.
welcome, Scott. Scott Watkins. Just a little bit about him, gang, is like I said, he's a Yinzer from Pittsburgh, husband, father, uh, currently in the insurance industry. That's not what we're going to talk about today, though. It's been a lay
That's
preacher.
a crazy thing in of itself.
Yeah. But what we're really, he's the founder of Hey Hi Media, and he's a children's book author. And he, we were just talking before we came on here. He did a reading this week to 200 students. So we're going to get into those books, Scott. But welcome to the show, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I've obviously seen the show. Sarah and Caleb, told me all about you, and I've been following you for a bit. So this is awesome. Thank you.
All right. So before we get into the books, I'm excited about those. I'm not sure if I'm excited because of what I've heard from Sarah and Caleb, or if I'm just excited that there's just a lot of different things, I guess, to be excited about. You're an author. You've had a passion about this, and you decided to follow it. It's funny that you're writing children's books because you're like 6'5", 300 pounds. You're a big dude.
Yep.
So I can imagine you going into some of these classes and reading to kids, which is fantastic, by the way. But I
Yeah.
just, there's a little bit of irony there. But we'll start out with your early journey, Scott. Like, what
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
you who you are? You know.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, yeah. And thanks again. It is funny. We were saying, before we hopped on that, I am Sarah's little brother, but I've never been little. 6'5", 300. It was always kind of funny when she introduced me that way. But yeah, so I think, talking about the early journey, I am a Yinzer through and through. Permanis is my actual and declared favorite food. Number two bestseller is number one in my heart. So, excuse me. But yeah, so I actually was a bit of a nomad when we were kids. I grew up, I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. We moved to Atlanta, Georgia when I was two, and then spent about 10 years there, moved to the DC area for about 5 years, and then finally to Pittsburgh in high school. But yeah, childhood was awesome. I had just such a cool, wonderful, loving family and upbringing. But it was eventful, and I think it kind of shaped a lot of who I am today. My when I was a kid, my father passed away, and then with all those moves, those usually took place just kind of coincidentally right at big peak moments in life, like middle school and then high school and all this different stuff. So, but all that to say, those types of things just kind of grew our family stronger and together and made me who I am today. So I'm very, very thankful for it.
Yeah, like we mentioned that you career wise right now you're in, I think, marketing and sales in the insurance industry, right? Which doesn't necessarily coincide with the bigger piece that we'll be talking about with your books and things like that. But why is that you kind of hinted around that that's a funny story? What's ironic about that?
About the being the children's book author. Yeah,
No,
I think.
let's go
Oh,
back to the insurance piece. You said you had a funny story, I think, about that.
yeah, yeah. I think it is because the irony there is it is a pretty professional industry, and I when I need to be, I'm certainly a professional guy, but I got the beard, the tattoos, and I love working with children because I'm a giant child at heart. So it is kind of funny to suit up every day and go to work when in reality I'd rather be home with my daughter, like playing with bubbles and stuff, right? so so yeah, a little bit of irony there, but I love what I do, get to talk and work with people all day, which is one of my favorite things to do. So it's good in that regard.
Okay, so we're gonna dip into uh, some of what you're doing with the books, but first let's talk
Yeah,
about what is Hey Hi Media.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So Hey Hi Media is, as it stands today, it is just a essentially a media company to sell the books. I self-publish my books, and I spent a little bit of time trying to do the traditional publishing route, and it's just it's tough, and it takes a certain level of patience that I tried to have, but but I just ultimately said, let's do this on my own and see how it goes, right? So in order to do that, I kind of wanted to do it so that I had the complete control over the whole process and how it's sold and things like that. So I could have gone to like the Amazon self-publishing route, but I decided just to turn it into my own company because I have kind of a larger vision for it. So Hey Hi Media is kind of the right now it's the catalyst, the medium to sell my books, but hopefully the larger vision comes into play. Down the road, we'll see.
Yeah, what would that be? What would be the long-term vision of that?
Yeah. So I think the whole reason I did it, again, I'm a child at heart, but I also absolutely love working with kids. My first, not at the risk of oversharing, maybe, my first declared major in college was religious studies, and I was going to go be a youth pastor. But truth be told, I was just kind of stepping into my faith, and that salvation piece is instant. Sanctification is a little bit of a process, and I just wasn't really living a life that coincided with being a youth pastor upon graduation. So I so then I switched my major as a bit of a knucklehead, and switched my major to just whatever was easiest, whatever got me graduated. So that was business management. And but at the root of it, I've always just loved working with kids. I got to do that in a kind of a youth group capacity over the last 10 years as well, from a volunteer standpoint. And this here is just kind of a way to maybe one day live out that passion. The bigger picture being just all different types of media platforms, and spreading that word to kids, whether it be a educational platform. The first two books are about history, but there's also a number of books coming out about adventures and about just kind of godly principles and things like that. And then also looking into starting some YouTube channels, maybe even some podcasting and things like that. So it's kind of a family media company with a lot of ideas that are in the process of implementation.
Hey everyone, hope you're enjoying this episode of Center for Victory podcast. Caleb Kolb here, Chief Adventure Officer for Center for Victory. We are doing a October rim to rim in the Grand Canyon trip, October 4th to 6th. Check it out on the Center for Victory website under the Experiences tab. And if you're enjoying this episode of the podcast, like, subscribe, and share with your friends. See you on the trail.
Wonderful. And I'd love, I'd love how this is part of kind of chasing your dream too. Like you've wanted this, and I think that's why this is inspiring, why I decided to have you on
Thank you.
as well, because you're still chasing after that dream. And speaking of dreams, what's your why? I mean, like, again, it does, like, because it, like, if I look at you, it doesn't fit like what people think, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It maybe not me so much, but other people, like, they look at you, see a big guy, you're thinking, well, is he is he a football player? Is he, is he a police officer? Is he a professional wrestler? I mean,
Yep.
all these things. I would not think children's author.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, I have a funny story about that, an aside maybe if I
Okay,
could. So,
absolutely.
one Christmas, I we had kind of implemented some budgeting and things like that for a while, some savings and things. And my wife always wanted this really expensive purse, and so for one Christmas, I'm like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go get her that purse she's always wanted. And so yeah, looking at me, I don't look wildly professional. And then I hate to say it, but sometimes when I'm in my comfy clothes, it's even worse. Like I got camo gym shorts, and it's like in the wintertime, I usually have a beard down to here. So I walk into this fancy store dressed like that, and just kind of really could not get um, the service that I thought I might get, and then I actually ended up going after work one day, and they came up, right up, and they're like, "Oh, hey, how can we help you?" So totally get it. I don't look the part, but kind of like what I mentioned earlier. The why is my love for kids, and I think that's rooted in my upbringing. Like I said, I had a wonderful childhood, but a very eventful one that actually was pretty difficult. And there was just, with the death of your father at a young age, and those movings and changing friends like 3, 4 different times, there was a lot of things to work through in that. And I just was so thankful to have parents that were so diligent in working with me personally, but also getting that help and being poured into. And I, just kind of developed a passion for that, just out of being so thankful for the experiences I've had with folks like that in my life. And I think that, again, that's just kind of by nature. I'm like a big child at heart. So the whole piece of just kind of having this fun voice and way to share the things that I'm interested in, and share the things that kind of sparked that joy in me as a kid, is kind of what I want to pursue.
Was there somebody in your life that, you mentioned the people pouring into you? Was there somebody in your life that was more of a mentor that really encouraged you, especially after your father's death?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it takes a village, right? So there's a number of people that I just look at. My mother is like the absolute epitome of strength that I could ever imagine. Just kind of going through that with 3 young kids. And then, later on, my stepfather was just an absolute godsend and blessing to take us in as his own, and pour into me that way. And then I had wonderful, wonderful grandparents. I never really got to meet any of my grandfathers. My stepfather, uh, you know, dad, Pappy. I did get to meet him for a bit, but my grandmothers were really just a wonderful source of influence for me. And my mother's mother, whenever the whole thing happened with my father, she actually retired early, and stayed down in Georgia with us for a while from
Wow.
Ohio. And in the summers, I'd go up to visit and stay with her for a couple weeks and things. And she just, throughout my entire life, was just one of my absolute best friends, and just a wonderful mentor toward me. She was a school teacher, and we, was a history buff, and I just became this big history buff. So we do everything under the sun that we could. Um, and yeah, even into adulthood, she passed away in 2020. And every morning on the way to work, I'd call her, and we would just talk about anything, talk about history, talk about sports, whatever. So she was awesome. She was a good, and actually the name Hey Hi Media comes from her. So it was kind of like her anthem and calling card. You'd give her a phone call, and she'd say hello, and you'd say, "Hey, Grandma, it's Scott." She goes, "Oh, hey, hi," just like so warm and welcoming. And so we all started saying it too, and then it just kind of became this thing. So that's where the name comes from. Yep.
Oh, I love that. I did
Yeah,
not know
yeah,
that prior to today. Like I did not know where
yeah.
that is such a great story, especially
Thank
since
you.
it's hooked to that. I had two grandmothers that were extremely, extremely impactful in my life.
Yeah.
Probably their prayers were the only reason I'm still living. Um, but
I
that's a
hear you.
great
Yep.
story, man. I really appreciate that.
No, thank you. Yeah.
So let's not wait any longer, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about these books.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know let's start with, let's just start with the one on your left. Like I'll just pick. So whatever one you have.
Nice.
Uh, so Independence, consider it declared. So let's talk
Yeah.
about this book. What's this one about?
Yeah, so this one is, kind of like it sounds. It's about some of the events leading up to the Declaration of Independence and the decision and the great debate that goes into that. So it kind of outlines some of the founding fathers, some of the things that were going on in the colonies, and then ultimately independence being declared. So yeah, obviously, a book on history, but it's really for all ages.
Yeah.
My 2-year-old daughter absolutely loves it because the pictures are wonderful and bright.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
it has a rhyming. I'm a weirdo. I can only pretty much write with a rhyming cadence. So everything rhymes and it's just kind of fun. So my 2-year-old daughter loves them, but yeah, they're for kids of all ages. I think actual readers maybe 6 and up, but
Okay.
yeah, just a fun little dive into the history of the Declaration of Independence.
That's awesome. And who does the illustration for you?
Yes, that's a wonderful question. So her name's Casey Pipetti.
Okay.
She has a company called Happy Goat Draws,
Yeah.
and I mean, just the coolest thing ever because I just went on LinkedIn one day and kind of Googled local illustrators because I wanted to work with someone local, and I reached out to her and one other person. She responded, and it was just like perfect because I'm not a wildly detail oriented person. So I would just kind of send her the story and my thoughts, and she just makes it come to life. So if I had to do that part, we just wouldn't be here today talking. It just
Wonderful.
no one would want to look at them. Yeah.
And what's the book on your right there?
Yeah. So this one here is called On Your Horse, Mr. Revere. So the subtitle is a fun retelling of Paul Revere's ride in the start of the revolution. And again, the same kind of concept, the rhyming cadence, and just fun, wonderful pictures. But it's kind of a fun take on Paul Revere's ride, that kind of famous ride where he warned everyone of the coming British. And it's fun too because I've gotten a ton of insanely awesome feedback on these because on the back of each book I put a what I call the funnest of facts, and I tried to make those
Hold it up
really
a little bit.
interesting. Oh yeah, yeah, not just your standard facts,
Okay.
but ones. So I've had parents and people reach out and they're like, I actually learned something during this. I'm like, nice. So just kind of trying to make that fun and spark that kind of lifelong learning itch, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And those are obviously real facts, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was really diligent because I a if you're going to declare be a history buff, it can't be wrong. But then
Right.
B, I'm pretty sure I can get sued some way, shape, or
Right.
form. So yeah, yeah,
And so you got this week, you got to go read your book. Is
yeah.
that correct? Was it Wednesday?
Absolutely. Wednesday. Yep.
Okay. Tell us about that. What was that like?
It was awesome. So it was at one of our local elementary schools, and Sarah and I's other sister, one of 5. So if I mention sisters, brothers, there's a lot going on. But she's a teacher at the elementary school, and she kind of just showed her librarian for fun, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, he has to come in and read these." So it was a super blessing. All the third, fourth, and fifth graders, and then some first graders as well. But yeah, just kind of hung out in the library, and as they came in for that period, I did about a 35 minute lesson on the importance of reading and how you can actually have fun reading, and then also read the books. So it was the coolest thing. I told her afterwards, when you leave vacation and you have that nostalgia already, I just didn't want to leave. I'm like, this was so fun. So it was cool.
Well, that's wonderful. And I assume you're up for more of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's just kind of one of the fun parts of having something new like this. The wonderful response just has been such a blessing. And I didn't necessarily start this to get rich or anything like that, but ultimately spreading the word and just kind of impacting the kids is the original mission of it. So yeah, any chance I get, I'm down for that.
Yeah, and it's always good. I think we're losing a lot of those things, or people are just making up their own stories a lot of times too. I mean, I don't want to get on a soapbox, but
Yeah, yeah. And call me old school. That's why I started with books because I love books. I read books all the time, and I was a kid that had a ton of trouble paying attention until I kind of found out that I could read books that I was interested in. And I just felt I told the kids on Wednesday, it's like practice for your brain, so your brain can grow big and strong. It's just like LeBron did with a basketball. It's pivotal to your growth, and that's just kind of, if I can spark that kind of urge to learn all throughout life of anything you're interested in, just pick up a book. There's something written on it, I'm sure.
absolutely. Yeah. And again, if you want to book that with Scott, they could just go to Hey Hi Media. It's heyhimediallc.com, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. HeyHiMediaLLC.com. And so we actually, I know the first two are history related, but there's two on deck. The next one is all, actually, you might appreciate this. It's my fur nephew, Trek Kolb, who leads a mission up Mount Kilimanjaro with my daughter and my niece. So that one's coming out next. And then there's another one about all these animals that sound like they look different than they are, like a dragonfly and a barracuda and an angelfish, and they just go on an adventure to discover their identities in Christ. So it's a lot of fun, different things coming out.
That sounds really fun. So speaking of adventure, like, since we're here together, do you have any, like, you have a fun story or a funny story about Caleb and Sarah?
Oh dear,
Since they'll
yeah.
probably watch this too. And a lot of
Right.
people, I mean, I do a lot with them, but I do a whole lot with Caleb. We were actually this morning we recorded a podcast together, and then we'll be together tomorrow morning taking a hike. So
Yeah.
we have a lot of stories. So share with us a funny story about them.
Yeah, and I don't know how funny it is,
Okay.
but it is like it just super. It's funny and cheesy at the same time. But
Okay.
so after my, long story short, after my kind of playing days of sports and things like that, my frame can hold a lot of weight, and if I don't keep it active, unfortunately, that weight can skyrocket. So, there was a good period where, I was much heavier than I am, and they do all these awesome adventures, and I've been an athlete my whole life, and was really down on myself for just kind of letting myself go and not being able to do these things that my whole family was doing, things like that. So they were insanely just influential and kind of supportive of me getting back into shape, and then ultimately when that happened, I kind of joke and say I was their first like adventure client because I'd kind of come up with these silly things that I knew they could do easily. Um, but I wanted to do them, and they'd be like, "Yeah, absolutely, let's go." So like we did the Gap
Yeah.
over COVID, which was
Hmm.
awesome. Just bike packing with them, and that was funny too because the last day, we're not talking a strenuous uphill, but it's like 13 miles uphill heading into Ohio Powell and
Hmm.
whatnot, and it was just pouring rain, so the trail became like sludge. And Caleb has just unlimited energy. I
Right.
have no idea, the motor, the wheel, it's just insane. Um, so he's like encouraging me the whole way, and he's like, "Oh yeah, actually, this does suck a bit." And I'm like, "Okay, thank you." But yeah, so
Sounds so much like him.
right. He has no problems at all, but he did at least empathize with me. Uh, but I think the funny one, so last year, 2 years ago, I got it in my head. I wanted to do the Teddy Roosevelt challenge. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. You traverse 50 miles in 20 hours,
Hmm.
and so he actually did it already on the Appalachian Trail, and he's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So we'll do it on the Gap, and so we got about 30 miles in, and I was hurting, but ultimately I was like, I think we can go. So we turn around to start, And the last 10 miles was in the middle of nowhere, and we had zero cell reception, and we had to go walk back through it. And I kind of got in my head a bit. So, we decided to throw in the towel I guess for safety purposes, really, because they would have had no problem. But so we walked back to the Sheets in Connellsville, and we're just getting a bunch of food. And my poor wife was 8 months pregnant and was like on her way to pick us up. And I think it might have been Caleb, maybe even myself, but walked into the beer cave, and all of a sudden we're like, you know what? Yeah, we just walked 30 miles. Let's get a few beers. So we're just sitting at Sheets, looking like a bunch of just bums that washed in out of who knows where, and just having all these like White Claws, beers, food as far as the eye can see. And my wife just finally gets there and she says, what is happening right now? I'm like, I don't know. So yeah, they're just, they're so insanely influential in the last however many years of my life, and just kind of getting that drive back, and that, back in shape, and doing these adventures and challenges. And it's just been so, an absolute blessing. Thank God every day for them.
Yeah. So are we going to see you in the canyon this year or no?
Oh, I want to. You're going in October, right?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah, I want to. We'll see. We'll
Okay.
see.
All right. Would love to have you, my friend. That would be great.
That
maybe,
would, yeah.
Maybe you can read the group one of your new books while we're walking through. All right.
Yeah, that would be that'd be super. And, until everyone's like, "Who's this big weird guy rhyming back here?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
So last question, Scott, and then we'll let you go. Because of our show, it's called your best day yet. How would you define your best day yet?
I was thinking a lot about this, and I definitely, could define it, but I have like a specific moment for it. And we were kind of talking earlier about personally and professionally, and mine's just kind of the same story, really. So it was when my daughter was born, but it wasn't even the actual birth. It was the that night we were in the hospital, and she had been crying for like 2 straight hours. It's like 3, 4 in the morning. And my wife and I are just sitting there like, the books don't mention this part, this is the biggest transition that you could never actually be prepared for. And, we were just working together to get her calmed down, and she falls asleep like in my arms. And of course, now at this point, my wife and I are wide awake, and we're just kind of sitting there realizing that like we have to go home tomorrow, and face life with our new family, and we were just so excited for it. And we had a conversation about just being a team, and keeping God in the center of everything that we're doing, and of our marriage, and just raising this little girl up in Him. And it was just such a reassuring piece. And I feel like honestly we grew, I don't know, we just grew just so significantly closer than you ever thought you could. And I honestly went home with just new purpose and meaning, both professionally and personally. Just this little girl that now relies on us, and just wanting to glorify God, and provide. It was just it's a cool experience, and we still talk about it sometimes, and just kind of never forget.
Wonderful.
So yeah, that's my best day ever. Wide awake at 4 in the morning, sleep deprived, and kind of worried at the same time.
All right. Very good. Well, thanks for coming on, Scott. And when you get those other books, we'd be happy to share them too. I think you guys should go out and get them. Just hold them up again there, Scott, before we wrap
up. Absolutely. Yeah, and Hey Hi Media, LLC.com. We're on Instagram as well at Hey Hi Media. So absolutely. Thank you very much. I can't thank you enough for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Go out and get them. Nice gifts. Those are always great gifts for kids. Yeah. So if you have kids or know anybody that has kids, you should always stockpile those as well. But thanks for being on, Scott. That's it's it for today, folks. Thanks for the inspiration, Scott, of following your dream, no matter what those are, or no matter how much we look silly doing it, or different, or whatever you might want to call it. But if you'd like more information, you can visit our website at centerforvictory.com. And just remember, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, make this your best day yet. We'll see you soon.